Hi, it's me again. Here we are. We're at lesson 5. We're writing about poetry, and this is going to be the second part of that writing about poetry unit. The learning objective today is explain the big idea of brothers using a clear 3-part thesis statement that we learned about last lesson, and hopefully today you're going to be able to do it a little bit more independently. What I want us to do then is just reflect on last lesson and do a little bit of a writing warm-up. So get your learning objective and your title down and underlined. And let's crack on. Okay. The warm-up should hopefully test your memory and get you to flex your muscles a little bit, get you thinking. So I want you to complete the following sentence. In stanza 1 of Brothers We See. I want you to describe to me what happens in stanza 1. Then, stanza 2 describes what then happens in stanza 2. So just to give you a little bit of a clue, we have in stanza 1, this is probably going to be a terrible drawing, something you might strap over an animal. There's some stirrups. This is a saddle. Then, stanza 2, we have Paul, and we have little bro, who is the speaker pulled more towards, Paul or the little bro, and think about why. Okay, number 3. Finally, stanza 3 reveals how. Okay, what is revealed to us in stanza 3? And to jog your memory, we have 2 very fast Olympic runners and 1 very small, very distant little brother. And then what is created between the older brother and the younger one? Now, once you've done that first writing warm-up, you've got those sentences done, you're on board, we're kind of ready to go. I'm going to give you one more writing warm-up to get you thinking about what the conflict in the poem seems to be. So, writing warm-up. Here we go. We're going to use because, but, so. Similar to how we did last lesson. And in terms of because, I want you to finish and give me a reason. Finish the sentence, give me a reason. If we're using but, you're telling me an alternative or a change. And if you're finishing the sentence with so, we're talking about a consequence of something. I'll just move that up onto the screen so you can see it properly. Okay, get that down, and also just make sure that you're getting down what it is that I want you to do with those 3 different conjunctions. We'll go into more detail about exactly what a conjunction is later, but these bits develop your sentences. So your sentence that I want you to develop looks like this, and it's about the conflict in the poem. The conflict in the poem is due to age. So it's the age between the two brothers. So what I want you to do is now explain to me because in as much detail as you can. Okay, if you need more time, pause, and that's fine. The second one will be the conflict in the poem is due to age, but, okay, complete that sentence in as much detail as possible, thinking about what other alternatives there are, as well as age. What ironies are there in the way that the older brother behaves? Again, if you need to pause, feel free to pause. Finally, the conflict in the poem is due to age. So, what's the consequence of that conflict due to their age? So what happens? What happens to their relationship? What happens on the day? What happens between Paul and the speaker? What happens between the speaker and the speaker's brother? And what impact does that have over time? So that's a nice easy exercise to get us thinking, and it also is a nice easy way to get you to develop your explanations within your sentences and make you sound clever. Eventually you'll start blending these three things together and you'll give me maybe a because, but, so within the same sentence, or a because and the so in the same sentence, and you'll write developed, smart, intelligent answers. Okay. What I want to do now is I want to further explore this idea of contrast. So, get down your subheading. We're going to explore some contrasts within this poem. If you've got a ruler, you're better than me. Underline it so it looks brilliant. Now I'm going to pull in all of your versatile vocabulary, or as much versatile vocabulary as possible today from this. And the words that you learnt today are moral and immoral. And you may well think that the older brother behaved in a particularly immoral fashion, or you may not. You might think that his actions were perfectly moral, perfectly good. But we're going to use those words when we talk about this poem and the things that happen within it. So, this will get us thinking, and it will get us thinking about what happens in the poem and the different parts of the poem. And it will mean that you can write a much better thesis statement once you understand what's actually going on. So, first thing that I want to do for exploring contrast, I want to have a look at the speaker. So, imagine that this terrible picture is the speaker when he is young. Okay, and this is him. He's got eyes, which is useful. He's got some spiky hair. Okay, how does he feel within the poem? Give me two things. What emotions does he feel at having to look after his brother? What emotions does he feel at having left his brother when he is young? Okay. Now, I want you to think about the contrast with the speaker when he is old, who is the person who wrote the poem, or rather he is the speaker of the poem. So he's going to have a slightly bigger head, definitely going to have a slightly bigger belly. That's what happens when you get old. Definitely has less hair, just a little bit on the side. And he might look a little bit more like this. How does he feel? Give me two things that speaker feels. Now, what you might come up with is something like this, but these are not the only ones. You might feel that the brother feels burdened by his younger brother. He might feel frustrated. He also might feel excited about having run away. He might feel free at having run away within the poem when he's doing those things. But actually, the older speaker, the person who is telling the story, might feel slightly different. He might feel more regret, or he might feel a sense of guilt at the relationship that is no longer there, or that a sense of realization that this is a pivotal or a transformative moment in their relationship. So realization that this moment is pivotal or transformative. Now, what I want you to think about is what exactly has transformed. Their relationship becomes what? At this point, by the end of the poem, their relationship is what? Give me two ideas. 1 and 2. By the end of the poem, their relationship becomes what? Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to put that thinking into process, and I want you to write one beautiful sentence, one artful sentence. And it's going to form probably the first part of your thesis statement, so it's going to be quite useful. So this is going to be your art of the sentence. And what I want you to try and do is capture the big idea of what Brothers explores. What's the main idea? Okay, what's the light bulb thing that Forster is trying to get through to us about this moment in the poem? Now, it's going to start like this, the same way that we started last week's. In the poem Brothers, Forster explores. Now I want you to tell me what he explores in this poem. And whilst you're doing that, I want you to use the phrase pivotal moment or transformative moment. I want you to use the word relationship. And I want you to explain what changes. And I'm going to be really clear that I want you to explain what changes in that sentence. Okay, take a minute to do that. If you need to pause it, that's completely fine. Now, as I said at the beginning of this section, I wanted to look at contrast. So once you've done that, I want to warm you up on what you would write after that in terms of the contrast. So there's some nice simple sentences that we can start you off with that can get you thinking about that. So your first one is going to be this. From the title, Brothers, we could observe that. Now, what would we observe if we just looked at the title? And how does the rest of the poem conflict with that? So now when you finish that sentence, I want you to try and use the word idealized, so you can describe it as idealized or not idealized. I want you to try and use the word secure and the word moral. Again, pause when you need to. Next one. Evidently, there is a conflict when. When you finish that sentence, I want you to try and use the word emotional. I want you to try and use the word chaos. And I want you to try and use the word superficial. Okay. Why is there conflict in the poem? Who becomes emotional? What is the added element of chaos which makes the person or something become emotional here? And then what reasons caused it? And are those reasons superficial or are they deep? Okay, write that answer in as much detail as you can. If you need to, apologies. If you need to pause, feel free to now move it up. Now you can see what I've written and pause it. 3. Clearly, the poet contrasts the opening line with the final line to reveal. Now, the opening line, if you remember, is saddled with you for the afternoon, me and Paul. This idea that he is trapped, he's frustrated. The last line here is I ran on, unable to close the distance I'd set in motion. So we go from being very close to the brother, having to look after him, being trapped, to I ran on, escaping the brother, but also maybe pushing it too far and not being able to get back and being close to him ever again. So clearly the poet contrasts the opening line with the final line to reveal, and I want you to include the following words: secure versus vulnerable. And I want you to try and use the word veneer. The next one, the final stanza, reveals the moment, it reveals this moment to be pivotal because, and I want you to explain that in as much detail, please, using the words rational or emotional. And if you can explain why one version of looking at this is rational and one version of what happens is emotional, even better. And then your final warm-up before your thesis statement will be number 5. The speaker's actions seem using our vocabulary for today, immoral, because, and I want you to finish that in as much detail. Why do his actions seem immoral? Then the speaker's actions seem immoral, but, okay, and now I want you to explain it in as much detail, thinking of another way of looking at his actions that might give an alternative. And then finally, the speaker's actions seem immoral, so, okay, what's the consequence of his actions here that seem immoral? What's the consequence to the relationship with his brother? What's the consequences, the way that he views this moment as an adult? Again, pause and finish these in as much detail as you can. Okay, these will warm you up for writing your thesis statement really, really well. That, and they will also just help you write really great essays and really great work. Okay, what we can do now you've answered those questions, is we can divide the poem up into some really key contrasts. So, Brothers works as 3 nice clear paragraphs. Okay, so the contrasts in Brothers, okay, or rather stanzas, oh dear, not good. Stanza 1, our contrasts would be between the idealised view of brotherhood versus what view of brotherhood? How does the speaker feel? Stanza 2 works between, I guess, this view of the little brother wanting to be secure, thinking that his brother is going to wait for him, but actually, what does the brother do? Who does he side with? Who is he pulled towards? And is that a deep reason to abandon your brother, or is it a superficial reason to do so? And then stanza 3, our contrast. Less contrast, I guess, but it would be this pivotal moment. This pivotal moment, and then why? Why is it pivotal? Okay, now you're ready to do quite a tricky poem and write up your thesis statement. So, what you should now have is your brain in gear, ready to write up your thesis statement with all of the ideas that you need in it from your warm-ups. So, your first sentence should start in the poem Brothers. Forster explores. And you tell me what he explores, what idea he explores, and then you put a big fat colon at the end of it. Then you tell me it reveals and you tell me first big thing, first idea it reveals, or the first conflict that it reveals. Then you do a comma. Then you do the second idea or the second conflict. And finally, it reveals or it discusses, and you put your third idea or your third contrast using any of the vocabulary or any of the ideas from the warm-up. Okay. What I want is something that is deep. I don't just want this. Okay. I want some added bits of explanation that bring in ideas from these questions here. Okay, if you just said the 3 ideas about idealized, secure and pivotal, that would be right, but it wouldn't be thrilling. If you use some of the vocabulary and the ideas from here, that's what you need to build in. Okay, give yourself roughly 4 minutes to finish that off. And then you need to do the quiz.